So let's go to Paul Hudrick now. McGarry with a good update. Chase Petty will pitch today. But now let's get back into the Sixers conversation. And all right, here we go. The final week of the season, Paul. It is finally here. And I got to ask you, even though some of the Friday night's game was dreadful to watch, I mean, it was just painful, but they figured out a way to get through that 5 games in 7 days without stubbing their toe. I mean, does that say something about this team's makeup?
I think it does, and it's funny because I've seen a lot of things written about how they've won games, but they haven't played great. Well, it's like, if anything, that shows me how good they can be because they haven't played great basketball, and yet they've won 8 in a row. So I think it shows me that when they put it all together, when they're all healthy, this is a really good basketball team. And right now, it looks like both conferences are kind of wide open, right? I mean, to me, there's no team where I look at it and I say, yes, this team is absolutely going to represent the East or the West in the finals. There are a lot of good basketball teams and plenty of questions on all these teams, too. A lot of questions that need to be answered for a lot of these teams, including the Sixers. So to me, this 8-game stretch, no, they haven't played their best basketball, but they've won 8 in a row.
Yep.
And that is not an easy thing to do. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care who's out. To win 8 games in a row is impressive.
Well, I tell you, it's almost more impressive that they're doing it against teams that are kind of like you mentally lose it. Like, we're at the playoffs. Just get me to the end. This team's missing 3 guys. We played here. I feel like them not even playing their best, and they're finding ways to win. And in that, they've been pushed. They've had to win at the buzzer. They've had to find go-to guys. So I think that this has all been a positive, actually.
In a weird way, yes. And I think, too, you can't understate, we saw in that Pistons game, we saw Tyrese Maxey. Man, he looked sensational on Saturday. And that's no small thing either. I mean, this is a guy that you might need at some point. I don't think he's going to be in the rotation when the playoffs come. I don't think he gets to that point. But this is a guy who's playing great basketball, and getting him that experience is huge. And plus, Matisse Thybulle, who was also, both of those guys started Saturday night. And I thought they kind of getting back to what you were talking about with the, it's hard to get up for these games when so many guys are out. I thought that Maxey and Thybulle gave them that little energy boost. Of course, you'd rather have Ben Simmons playing, but to get those 2 guys who don't play a ton, to have them in the starting lineup and give you that boost of energy to start the game, I thought was big. And that's why they I thought were wire to wire. They won that game. So I think in a weird way, yeah, I think there are things to take. And again, I go back to the fact that it just shows you that when this team is healthy and when this team is playing good basketball, they're going to be really tough to beat.
Well, yeah, and they're on a back-to-back 5th game in 7 nights. 2 starters are out, and they go wire to wire and win that game. It kind of shows you 2 things. One is, that they are focused. They're focused on winning this number 1 seed. Joel has played in the back-to-back this whole week. He's not sitting out. So there's a couple things there. But that being said, you mentioned Maxey. He had a game. He actually overshadowed, I guess, what Milton does. And you wonder if Doc has consistently said he's going to play 11 guys. I can't take him at his word for that. Are you taking him at his word that he's going to go 11 guys or feel comfortable playing 11?
I think he feels comfortable playing 11. I don't think that means he's going to absolutely do it. I think it does 2 things, Mike. I think one, it's creating competition, because if you're playing 11 guys, some guys are going to be fighting for minutes because your starters are playing, that trio of Embiid, Simmons, Tobias Harris, they're playing 38 minutes a night in the playoffs. Like that's happening. So that's already, all those minutes are already, kind of spoken for. Plus you're going to have Danny Green playing 30 to 35 minutes a night, pretty much guaranteed. So that's already, and then Seth Curry, and then, a veteran in George Hill. I mean, there are minutes that are already allocated to certain guys. So that means to me, when Doc Rivers is telling them, no, I feel comfortable playing 11 guys, that's competition. That means that's guys you're going to have to earn minutes over. And it means, I think he's going to have a shorter leash on some guys. Whether that's Furkan Korkmaz if he struggles defensively, whether that's Shake Milton if he kind of struggles to get going or, struggles with turnovers. Or if Matisse Thybulle even, who I think is pretty solidified in his bench role, but at the same time, if he starts struggling and maybe gets into his old bad habits of maybe, cheating on plays or, over pursuing things and leaving guys out to dry, I think he'll have a shorter leash. So I think when he talks about having 11 guys, I don't think that's what he's definitely going to do. With that said, too, Mike, I will say this. I have no idea what he's going to do because he has been playing it pretty close to the chest, and maybe that's something that works out for him. Maybe that's something he's doing on purpose because he doesn't want to give teams too much. And that's the other thing, too. I think, saying you're going to play 11 guys, the opponent's got to scout 11 guys. You know what I mean? They have to know what these 11 guys are capable of. So I think there's some gamesmanship in there, but I do think he's also happy with, with a guy like Max Hughes kind of on the outside looking in, I would say, at the rotation, but that he's not afraid to go to him if he feels like he can help him.
That's interesting. Now, because Doc is obviously famously or infamously, I guess, has lost 3-1 series leads, I think 3 times, right? Am I right? Is it 3 times? And
yeah, I think
you
it's 3.
wonder what he's learned from those and if he takes that into this year. Because last year, they're up 3-1, and it was kind of like famously like, we're okay, we just need to win one of these games. And he never really made the adjustments or change. It was, we're just going to win one of these games. And if does he learn from that, or does he roll that same mentality at that? If we're up 3-1 in a series, hey, we're good enough, we'll just figure out a way to win one.
I want to preface this answer by saying that I think Doc Rivers has done an outstanding job. They're about to get the 1 seed, and he plays no small part in that. I think he's done a terrific job. With that said, I do worry about what you're pointing out with the fact that the Clippers blew a 3-1 lead last year, that it's not the first time in his career that has happened. And with this kind of hockey lineup, all bench unit that he goes to, is he going to do that in the playoffs? Because to me, I do not think that's a recipe for success, especially when you have, as I already mentioned, the 3 top guys. You have 2 all-stars and a borderline all-star that should be playing big, big minutes. There are plenty of opportunities for you to mix and match guys where you do not need to go to that all-bench unit. So for me, I would be disappointed to see that. I would not be surprised, though, either, because I think, we've seen Doc Rivers do it all season, and I think it's fair to wonder if he's going to do it in the postseason. I don't think that's the way to go.
Right.
And that is a concern to me. But I will say, I don't want to take anything away from Doc Rivers and the job he's done this year, but that is a concern for me.
No, yeah, I agree. And I feel like, I've been accused a lot of saying, the NBA coach doesn't have a huge role night to night. I feel like the NBA coach sets the culture. Yeah, there's a game here or there or a play here or there where they have a part in, or they call that big inbounds play, or they make that big change. But I feel like too many people think the coach plays too much of a role in wins and losses. We heard it with Brett Brown all the time. Oh, he's the worst. They lose because of him. No, they didn't have good enough players. That's why they didn't win. This team's better because they have a better roster. But I think Doc changed the culture. He has set a different culture, a different mindset, and that needs to be applauded. But where the coach does have a role is making that adjustment. I think there's been a lot of people on this show who have said they thought Brett did a great job in the Toronto series, making adjustments and making changes. They just didn't have good enough players. But will Doc make those adjustments? That's my concern is, look, he's done a great job to get them to this point, but once they get there, is he going to stick to his guns, or is he going to say, you know what, this isn't working, we're going to cut it back to 8 guys or 9 guys?
Yeah, and I think when you look back at the Brett Brown era, say what you will, Brett Brown had his shortcomings in certain ways, but the options that Doc Rivers has this year compared to the options that Brett Brown has had the last couple of years, it's not even close. When you look at the guys that he can go to now, it's a vastly improved roster, not only from just better players, but better fitting players is the big thing. So that's certainly a factor. But to your point, yes, you have to give Doc Rivers also credit for that culture that he has nurtured, because he has. You've heard players, most notably Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, talk about the accountability, and that's what Doc Rivers has created, that environment. So I think that's a big factor as well. And yeah, Mike, I think the biggest example I see from the season, and it just happened the other night when you're talking about that dreadful Pelicans game, Doc Rivers goes to Mike Scott instead of Tyrese Maxey. He said, I went to that because of the matchup, because the Pelicans were bigger. If you're telling me that you went to Mike Scott over Tyrese Maxey because you were afraid of Wenyen Gabriel at the 4, but then you play the Bucks and you're not afraid of Dwight Howard versus Bobby Portis, there's a disconnect there that kind of scares me a little bit too, because he has really, and I get it. You see how good Dwight can be, like how good he was against the Pistons. And there's been games like that where Dwight has played a big role and he's made a big difference and played great.
Saturday night.
Right. There have been games where Dwight hasn't been as good and where the matchup has hurt them and he hasn't gone away from Dwight. So that is kind of, to me, a little bit hypocritical. And that's my concern, is like moments like that. Like, is he going to go to Mike Scott if a team has a 4 out? Like, no, like you can't do, like, it's got to be mix and match it to where either Tobias Harris or Ben Simmons are on the floor or whatever playing that 4. Like that, those are kind of some of my little concerns. Yeah, I wonder, is he going to pivot? Because, you might play Milwaukee. When you play Milwaukee, is he going to pivot away from Dwight Howard against Bobby Portis, who's shooting the hell out of the ball this year? I think he's like 45% from 3. Are you going to go away from Dwight Howard in that case? Because he's going to kill you if you don't. So those are the kind of the little things I'm very curious to see. And I don't know the answer. I really don't right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, and we're talking with Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider, of course, from 97.3 ESPN.com. This last week here is interesting because 2 wins, they get the 1 seed. And now the standings have gotten really intriguing because you got the Knicks at 4, you've got Atlanta at 5, and now you got Miami tied with Atlanta, and you play Miami. And I'm imagining a 4-5 matchup of Knicks-Hawks is a lot more attractive than Miami getting into that spot, which turns this game on Thursday to double equal. If you can win tonight and Thursday, you clinch the 1, but you can also possibly knock Miami back. I would imagine they'd rather have Miami in the 6th spot than the 4-5. Would you agree with that? Or would you think that New York or Atlanta is a more difficult second-round option for them?
It's, I don't think it matters only in this sense. Like the Heat haven't been very good this year.
They're starting to play better.
They've been playing better, but they're not as good as they were last year. I mean, it's notable. They're not. And I hear what you're saying. It's fair. Like, would you rather play a team with less experience because you have a Jimmy Butler who can take over games and win games single-handedly for Miami? You have really good shooters. Tyler Hero's had a down year. I don't think they're the same team they were last year. I just don't. And I look at a team like the Knicks. Now, the Sixers should beat the Knicks in a 7-game series, but that would be an ugly, ugly, ugly series win because the Knicks play ugly basketball and they force their opponents to play ugly basketball. We see it in every game. The Sixers won every game against them, but they were ugly. All the games they played against the Knicks were just knockout, drag out, like 90s era basketball ugly. And do you really want to play that brand of basketball in the second round? I think that's a fair question to ask. So for me, I don't think they want to win the 1 seed. I mean, clearly, I think that's why they want to beat Miami. Is that maybe an added bonus that you knock them down a peg and maybe keep them out of the 4-5? Sure. Yeah. But I think the bigger thing is beat Indiana, beat the Heat, get that 1 seed and lock it up, and then you can figure everything else out from there.
I will say, as much as everyone's ready for the playoffs and you're kind of putting down the stretch here, there is some intrigue in this last week with seeding. I mean, it is not locked at all. There are no matchups that are really locked in other than 2 and well, not even really that. They're only a half a game apart, but 1, 2, and 3. Right. That's all you know. 1, 2, and 3. I think 4, 5, and 6. It seems that the Celtics have faded. They're going to be in that play-in. Washington, though, has moved themselves up to 9. It would be interesting if they, Paul, get themselves into that 7-8 matchup. That was something to keep an eye on as well. All right, Sixers have the night off, which means Paul Hudrick has the night off. At Paul Hudrick on Twitter. Follow him. Sixers Pacers tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Paul, thanks, bud.
You got it, Mike. Sounds good, man.
Paul Hudrick, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.